everyone, welcome again to the channel. Today we're back on GTSport and we're back with a Group 3 race at Le Mans. This is my first video actually showing a race at Le Mans. I had quite a few races on this night and did very well. This is definitely a combination that suits myself again. Like I say in the track guide, I managed to get very close to the top 10 with very limited time actually doing the qualifying. As you can see there, starting from pole, got some reasonably fast drivers in this race. Carry WRX, a reasonably good driver. He got the better of me at Bathurst in that race where you saw we were very closely matched. But this track, the first aim I wanted to do, because obviously the slipstream is massively strong at this track, first thing you want to do is get yourself out the slipstream. So we're going to keep all the action on board for this video. I've done a lot of videos changing the cameras around recently. I wanted to get back to the core race, and as you can see there, first aim was to really push the car through this first sector. You can see really aggressive, pushing the limits very close, but not getting a penalty, and pushing really hard through there. Managed to build up nearly a 6/10 lead, 7/10 lead straight away as I come through to the final corners before the long straight. And again, pushing really hard because I wanted to lose the slipstream before I got on the straight. If you can manage to do that, it's a massive help, and you can visually see how hard I'm trying to push. You can see it on the top right hand corner on that camera there, and the middle camera above, where you can see I'm gaining the gap, and we're nearly at 1 second already, and I'm over 1 second on the straight. And this was the aim. This is what I was trying to do every single race, was just really go for it on that first opening minute. It's so important because now he's out my slipstream and I've got a bit of a comfort zone, so I can just drive smoothly, and if I keep it consistent, I should be able to just maintain this lead and just keep the gap to the driver behind. The only thing about this track is obviously the penalties, and trying not to get a penalty on this track is not as easy as it sounds. It was only 4 laps, but even then it was a hard task to try and get through. It's just a few corners that really do cause the issue, which will show through the race. Pretty much everyone's going to get penalties, you know that in this race. I think some people manage to do it without a penalty, and that is a really good task to do that on this track, to drive this without a penalty. I think it's a little bit easier with these Group 3 cars than it was with the Group 1 cars. Obviously with the Group 1 cars you're travelling so much faster, it's a little bit hard. As you can see there, going into this corner again, trying to push really hard because I wanted to get a clean exit to make sure he didn't get any closer to my slipstream on the exit of the corner. Again, he's getting a little bit closer, but he's not really in the slipstream yet. You can see there it's just over a second still, and I'm able to just really just keep him out that slipstream. That was the main aim. But then we're coming to the corner where I do tend to struggle a little bit. This is the corner that I do have a few issues with in terms of getting the best exit from. Sometimes I do need to try and widen the angle into this corner, so I go really wide into it, down into second gear, try and take some of the curb off, and I actually do that really nicely that time. You can see much better than what I did in the qualifying lap. I wish I would have done it reasonably light, but even then you can see the car behind has actually gained on me still. He's gained about 2/10 to a 10th, and that again shows you that I need to work on that corner because I'm losing a couple of tenths just on that one corner. Maybe he pushes the brake in a little bit further than what I do, but I prefer to just not push it too hard because in case you just outbrake yourself into that corner. But we've got the gap over 1 second still, so we're verging on being out that slipstream. You can see P2's lost position to the PG Motorsport, so we're going to jump on board with PG Motorsport for that camera in the top of the screen, and you can see PG Motorsport just over a second behind myself, also trying to push really hard through that corner. I really did tend to get a better exit than a lot of other drivers from that corner. I said it in the track guide video. If you haven't checked that out, please make sure you check that video out. I do explain in more detail about the lap and how to get the most out of this track. As you can see there, pushing out there, and again 2/10. My theory on that corner was brake really early and ensure a really solid exit, and then going through these corners just trying to keep it nice and clean. No penalties up to this stage, which was nice, and it makes a change because normally I was picking up a penalty pretty much every single race on the first lap, where obviously I'm trying to push really hard to break the slipstream. This race managed to get a 1.3, 1.4 second lead and no penalty, and again really hooked that corner up, pushed a little bit wide there, but not wide as a lot of people do. You can see in the background on that top right hand corner then, if you want to rewind, go back, look how far people were pushing it. And this is what I don't like, because look how far I pushed it wide and I got a 1 second penalty. Now if you go back and have a look at if you have a little look at the way they were pushing through that corner on that particular lap and how far wide they took it, the guy behind me didn't get a penalty. I'll actually at the end of the video I'll show you how far he pushed it compared to myself on that one corner, and just show you why I don't think the penalty system is particularly fair. I think there's something they need to work on, because he runs a lot further wide than I do, but doesn't pick up a penalty, and I don't understand why it gave me a penalty there when I didn't run as far wide. It must be something to do with the speed you carry through the corner. Because I carried more speed through the corner but took a less wide line, I got a penalty. So we'll have a little look at that in another video, at the end of this video, and we'll go through that and try and analyse why I picked up a penalty there and he didn't. Again, pushing really hard on that exit there and getting very close to picking up a penalty. It's so easy to pick up a penalty on that corner, but you can see visually I've got that gap increased quite well, and I really wasn't too worried about a 1.2 second penalty because I've already got a lead of 2.5 seconds, and that's pretty much solid now, so I can calm down a bit now. I don't really have to be as aggressive with my drive, and I can just try and be a little bit smoother and just try and maintain a reasonable lead, because I was having a really good night on this track. I was really driving well. I think the only race I had a bit of a disaster was the first race, and that really wasn't my fault. It was because on the chicanes which we've just gone through there, you can see the green bollards that stick out. Someone had knocked one of them on a previous lap, and it was pretty much on the apex of the corner, and I was the first car coming round in the lead, and my front tyre went on that and it just flicked me round and pretty much spun me through like about 180 degrees, and I was facing the other way, which was a bit frustrating because I feel that if this is an FIA game, I think that they surely can just remove stuff like that, within 20 seconds of it happening. Them green bollards that you just see there on the right hand side, they're the ones that were on the previous chicane, and I think they need to do what they did on some other games. If stuff like that happened, they removed it. I think Project Cars introduced a patch on the original Project Cars where on the next lap it'd be removed, because obviously marshals would remove it. That's what would happen in real life. It can't be hard for them to do that, and I think they really need to do it, because it cost me the win, and I lost out on I think I ended up about P5 or 7 or something like that, and it was a bit frustrating because it was through no error of my own. It was because someone else had gone wide and hit a cone onto the track. But this race is going much better. You can see there, I was aware of that now, and I was actually looking out for them cones pretty much every lap, trying to make sure I didn't come into contact with any, and just being a bit cautious. So make sure you do look out for that if you're doing this race at all in the future in any other different classes of car, because them green bollards will literally wipe you out of the race. As you can see there, got the gap nearly up to 3 seconds. It's 2.5, 2.6 seconds, and driving reasonably consistent at the moment. One thing I did not like about this race was the amount of laps. It was a little bit baffling. It was only obviously under, it was around if you push in, it's under a 4-minute lap. So if you take that into account, four times obviously 4 is only 16 minutes. I think they should have really done a 5-lap race, because with the 4 laps that we've got here, it was an out lap, which wasn't a flying lap, and then you're in lap to the pits, which again is not a flying lap, and then you out lap again. So the only actual proper lap you got to do was the final lap, and I just didn't like that. I think 5 laps would have been much better. Would have made it a 20-minute race, would have brought into effect a bit more fuel saving. They could have changed some of the settings, and I think it just would have been a lot more enjoyable in general. So you can see there now, coming up to the pit stop phase, and this is another point that was, with this way of doing the pit stops, it was really breaking the rhythm, because you wasn't able to get in any sort of rhythm of doing a lap after lap. It was just out in. I didn't really like that. I wanted it to be more of doing continuous laps, which 5 laps would have been a bit better, because you could have pitted at the end of 2 and then done 3 consecutive laps. So you can see they're pushing really hard in the pit lane, and I accidentally on this race clicked change tyres. You didn't need to change tyres. I just panicked and pressed it too fast, trying to obviously get through the pits as fast as I could, and I didn't really want to change tyres. But luckily for me, no one else was following the strategy that I was doing. In other races, I was winning by 7-8 seconds because of the strategy I was doing. No one else was following me with this strategy, but luckily for myself, I put them on, but it didn't really make much difference because other people were changing their tyres too, which was not the right strategy to do. The best way to do it was by not changing your tyres and just driving on, because if you have a little look at the tyre wear before I went in the pits, it weren't that bad, and most of the lost time that you got from not changing the tyres was a little bit in the first sector and a little bit in the last sector. It wasn't enough to warrant, you only had 2 laps to do, and you were only losing probably a couple of seconds through the last sectors, maybe a second on lap 1 and a second on lap 2 with the mixture of the first and the last sector. So it wasn't worth changing the tyres, because it's about 4 or 5 seconds to change the tyres. So it's best just to stay out. And you see there was, if you'd just seen it on the track then, you would have seen that green bollard that I was talking about before. There was one there which I noticed on a previous lap, so I was trying to make sure I avoided that. Ran a little bit wide through that corner, as you've seen there. It was only fractions wide, and I was really worried at that stage if it was going to give me a penalty, but luckily I got away without getting a penalty there. And it was really strange, because normally running that little bit wide like that would give you a penalty. It must be because I lifted or something, or didn't carry as much speed through the apex of the corner. It must have something to do with the speeds you carry through the corners, whether it gives you a penalty or not, because I definitely did that corner a little bit wider than what I have done before, and I've been given penalties for it before. But you can say it really is nervous on this track about the penalties, because this is why I say it kind of takes the fun out of the track a little bit. It's not so bad in these cars, but you kind of feel like you can't push too hard, and if you watch them in real life, they run wide on all the corners that we run wide on this game. Is what they run on quite wide on in real life, and they don't get penalties for it. I think they allow certain corners to be pushed a little bit because of the nature of the corners, but GT Sport punishes you really harshly, I think, for some of these penalties. As you can see there, getting really aggressive up against the curb and pretty much nailing that perfectly, and getting a reasonable exit as I go up this straight there. And you can see I've managed to get that gap to 3.5 seconds, so doing okay at the moment. It's a shame that I forgot to change the tyres, because at this stage I'd now be about 7.5 seconds ahead. And what that enables you to do as well, without changing tyres, is if someone's been really aggressive on their fuel saving and you've not been so aggressive, you've been driving aggressively, it enables you then just to keep going aggressive on the fuel, because if you've not changed the tyres, you've still got the fuel to run aggressive to the end, so you find yourself being able to defend very well down the straights. And also if you get in a slipstream, you're able to overtake. So it's a good strategy if you're behind someone. If you say you go in the pits 3 seconds, 4 seconds behind the leader, but there's 3 cars in front of you, it's a really good strategy at this track if the settings enable are okay enough and not too harsh in terms of the times 6 or 7. If it was times 10 or something, you might find it a bit difficult. However, if it was on the settings that were on this race, you'll find that you're able to do that. As you can see there, pushing really hard through these corners, and I really do love the flow of this track. It's one track that I really enjoyed on iRacing as well. When the Blancpain was there on that series and that game, I did enjoy driving at that track. It was great fun, and I just wish this would have been a bit longer. It just wanted to be longer, this race. 4 laps for me, it was just over too quick. I wanted at least 5 laps. It would have been nicer longer, but let's hope some endurance racing comes to GT Sport at some point. It really does need just one set, even if they just added one separate race that was an endurance race, either driving Group 1, 2, 3 or 4 every single day, or even just a weekly endurance race. It's on all week that you can just keep entering, for the same car, same track that's on every week, and then it just alters every week. I wouldn't have a problem with that, as long as there was just something endurance based that we could race, an hour-long race or even 90 minutes, something like that. I think an hour would be pretty much ideal, as I think 90 minutes you might start getting a lot of people just quitting and backing out, but I think an hour race or 40 minutes to an hour would be really good fun. And it would really show the difference between strategies as well. They could bring in the strategy element a lot more and reduce some of the times, like the tyre wear and stuff. As you can see there, pushing really hard over the line, and again, you can't really get a good lap because of the way the pit stop is. And you can see there, the only real lap that you could push for a fastest lap was this final lap. I've got a 1.3 second penalty. I've got nearly a 4 second lead, so I wanted to push fairly hard in this lap. As you can see there, driving really aggressively into the first chicane, and again giving some respect over the curbs, not pushing too far wide, and again on the exit not really pushing too far wide there. But again, you'll see the green bollard on the track in a minute as we go through these corners. I'll see if it's still there. It was there for 2 laps. Whether it's been dislodged by another driver yet, I'm not too sure. As you can see there, going through this corner, it was just on that corner, but it was on the curb. Someone else had hit that there and knocked it onto the curb. So that could be a race ender for someone through no fault of their own. They really do need to fix that issue. I think a lot of people would be annoyed as, again, I've picked up another penalty. You see, I bet I didn't run as wide that time as I did on the previous lap, but I've got a penalty this time, and that's why I think it's got to be something to do with your apex carrying speed and how much you're actually carrying the speed through the corner as well when you do run wide, because that I didn't run as far wide then. I didn't feel like I did as I did on the previous lap, but I picked up a penalty. But this was a little bit of a hard situation now, because I've got nearly a 4 second penalty. As you can see there, it's very close to 4 seconds. It's going to be 4 seconds if I go over the line, because it rounds it off, and I've got a 3.7 second lead, but I wanted to get the fastest lap of the race. So what I was going to do was just see the aim was just to push really hard now, push to the end of the lap to try and get the fastest lap. If I could get the gap over 4 seconds, I was just going to go over the line and not take my penalty, because I know that he wouldn't obviously be able to catch me up and I'd still get the win. But if it was getting close to marginal, whether it was a dead on 3.8 or 4 seconds of gap, I'd have to just take the penalty at the end of the race, because it wouldn't cost me that much in actual lap time. so I'd still get the win in the race. As you can see there, I've built the lap up, built the gap up again fairly consistently, just adding to that, the gap every lap, just adding to it every little bit. And I always seem to lose a bit on this corner, but again, pushing reasonably hard again, trying to get on the power nice and early. And I seem to, I feel like I do it okay, but it just seems like every lap, every single other driver just gains about a tenth or two on me. So it must be something to do with my braking. Maybe I'm just braking a bit too early or a bit too cautiously. But at this lap, I actually gained a tenth on the driver behind, which was actually quite surprising, because he was gaining quite a bit on me when he was doing that corner the majority of the time. But now we're dead on just over 4 seconds, so if I could just keep pushing, so you're going to see me drive fairly aggressively through these corners, because I wanted to get that gap to around 4.5 seconds so that I could keep the lap going to get the fastest lap of the race, because I really wanted the fastest lap of the race. I'm pretty much just challenging myself at this stage, because you only have one opportunity to get the fastest lap, and it's the final lap, because the way they did the 4 laps. As you can see there now, P2 dropping back a bit. He seems to get a bit of oversteer coming out of that corner. He was 3.9 seconds going into that corner, where he's obviously carried more speed into it, but because I go for an earlier braking point and getting a solid exit, it's gone from 3.9 to 4.3 seconds. So now it's getting very close to me being able to just carry on and go over the line. So I'm pushing really hard through this part of the track and trying to make sure that I can just get that fastest lap and not have to lift on the line. You can see me driving very aggressively and really pushing. Obviously I had the fresh tyres on. Normally I wouldn't have the fresh tyres. Went in really aggressively there. You can see there I ran a little bit wide there, but lifted because I didn't want to get another penalty. I had to have a little lift, but it didn't really cost me too much. And this is a section where I was gaining on pretty much everyone every single lap. So I was pretty much at this point, I was thinking 4.3 seconds out, I'm just going to go for it. I want the fastest lap, I'll risk it. So you can see they're driving really aggressive over the curbs, and I gained half a second straight away on that little part there, you can see. So went over the line, 3 minutes 56, and I win the race after the 4-second penalty come off by nearly a second. So I judged that pretty much perfect, and I got the fastest lap. So you can see there, it was worth going for that fastest lap on that final lap. It's a bit strange that it still gives you the fastest lap though, when I obviously had a ran wide out of that corner. It probably didn't actually gain me anything in time, because running wide out of that corner actually loses you a tenth or so, because you end up getting on the curb and you lose acceleration. And that's why I think the penalty system's a little bit too strict in terms of, if you run wide you just get an instant 2-second penalty for something like that. It needs to have a little look at your other laps and then judge it by that, but I don't think it's probably too complicated for the system to do. Anyway, another really enjoyable race. I did enjoy racing this track. I had a lot of good races. I think I won about 5 in a row here. It brought my tally up quite high, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. But what we'll do now is I'm going to go back and show you the footage that I wanted to show you earlier in the video that I mentioned. Okay, so let's have a little look at the issue that I was talking about in terms of the track limits, where I got a penalty but the driver in P2 didn't. So this is my run on lap 1. You can see there, going into the corner, staying on the limits there, running fractioning wide, not wide at all, and I got back on the track as soon as possible. I picked up a penalty for that. This is P2, who runs way further wide but doesn't pick up a penalty. Lap 2, again he does the same thing, doesn't pick up a penalty. Now this is no issue. I mean, if he's able to do that, I've not got an issue with him doing it. It's more, my issue is more that the games give me a penalty for not running as far wide. As you can see again, lap 4 runs further wide than I did. I actually even brought the car back onto the racing line faster by not wanting to run wide, but still picked up a penalty. It's really strange that it was doing that, and there must be some sort of line that you can take through there without picking up a penalty, but hopefully they sort that out, because it was a bit strange that I got a penalty but other people weren't for running a lot further wide. I know there are tracks that you can do this on. Nürburgring GP is a classic that you can actually get a penalty for running less far wide. Sometimes if you just go on the green Astro, it'll pick you up a penalty, but then other times you can run really far wide, out all the way on the grey tarmac really far, and it won't give you a penalty. So it's just an issue I think they need to have a little look at and sort out, but there was no harm done. Obviously it's not P2's fault, it's just the game. Obviously new track, they haven't fully sorted out the track limits yet probably and how they should be, although there are certain corners that they do need to loosen up a bit at Le Mans. I think they need to allow a fraction more, a couple of there's a couple corners where they just need to loosen them up a little bit, because even in real life they're not as strict as what they are at this track on GTSport. I've seen real life drivers running well further wide on some corners than what is allowed on GTSport, but whether they'll ever do that is another thing. But I hope they do for the enjoyment's sake, because for the fun sake, you don't want to be having 10 cars on the finishing line having to take penalties. It's getting a bit it's getting a bit silly. And this isn't even the contact penalties. This is just the track limit penalties on this track. But they need to find a nice balance where it's in between. I think Le Mans, that corner there was obviously just a random bug that's just, it's not picking up a penalty somehow, because the other corners at Le Mans are very strict. I just think some of them are a little bit too strict, just fractionally, not by much. They're very close to getting Le Mans how it should be. We want stricter penalties. We want the track limits to be more on point. But there's a couple of corners where you go out by an inch on the tyre, on your right hand tyre, and it'll give you a penalty. I think they just need to loosen it a little bit, just so that you're not picking, because even sometimes I picked up a 10-second penalty for going out by, I looked at it, it wasn't even 1 foot on the rear right tyre. The right front was in the limits, the rear right wasn't. On I think it was on the first sector at Le Mans when you go onto the first part of the straight, and I picked up a penalty. But then other times you can run all four out and it won't give you a penalty. So it's just a bit more consistency, I think, is what's needed. But anyway, a really enjoyable track to race on. I do enjoy driving Le Mans. It's such a great experience racing there on this game, and it looks amazing again. And hopefully there are going to be some more races on there. I think Group 4 will be even easier to keep it in its limits, and probably be a little bit more fun because of that. So maybe that'll pop up sometime. Not too sure. Let's have a little look and see what happens as we get through to some other weeks when it'll be on again. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that video. We'll be back with more GT Sport races and more track guides as the days go on. Hopefully we'll get maybe another video out tonight. If I've got time, I'm going to try and get the Nürburgring race out from the Group 2 race that I did the other day. That was a really good race again, so hopefully I'll have that race out later today also. Anyway, thanks again for watching. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please click that subscription button and click the notification button so you don't miss any future videos I do upload, like I say, every single day on GT Sport. And give the video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video. Thanks again for watching, everyone.